Good evening, everyone. If I can have you take your seats, please. Again, I apologize for the parking situation, but some things are outside our control. We share the lot with the school district. They're normally really good neighbors and good partners, but tonight we just seem to have a party at the same time. So, but good evening and welcome to today's Great Shakeout. Actually, tomorrow is the Great Shakeout, October 16th. And it's become an event that happens nationwide now where people discuss and go through exercises concerning earthquake preparedness and actually disaster preparedness. This is our earthquake and infrastructure town hall. So with the Great Shakeout, I thought this would be an appropriate time to have one of our leading experts speak and then cover other topics. Also, one of the most frequent questions I get from residents, particularly following the Eaton fire, has been concerning our water system. And where do we get our water? And are our reservoirs full? And what do we do in the event of an earthquake and our pipes are all broken? And how are we going to get water? Because we could live without food for a while. We could live without a lot of things, maybe electricity for a while, but living without water is an issue for us. Before I get started, I just would like to introduce at least one of our council people that showed up. Council member Hunter Chang. And I know our mayor is very interested in this topic, Gretchen Shepherd-Rami. So I'm shocked she's not here, but maybe she's looking for parking. So, but she is a supporter, and actually our entire council. We could never do the things we do without the support of the council, and residents. The parcel tax. I think the council. I know the council places a very high priority on public safety, as do our residents. It's one of the things that makes San Marino a real joy to work at. Is the support that we get from residents. It really is a pleasure to work here. And it's a testament to those of you that showed up to increase your preparedness on and knowledge on earthquakes and infrastructure in our own city. That being said, before I forget, I wanted to introduce our city manager. I know some of you don't know him, even though he's at every event and is around our city all the time. Philippe Eskandar. He was on the next page. So, but that being said, I find one of the most difficult tasks that I find in talking to residents is trying to convince them there may be a day where it's not 72 degrees and sunny and blue skies here. It is such a great place to work and live. It's hard to envision a day where we wake up and it is not like that, like January 7th, a different day because of something that's occurred. And our city may be facing a real crisis on that day. So the Robert J. Stafford Act, which is the law that codifies disaster assistance to states and local governments, is put forth by FEMA. It's been in the books for a number of years, and it categorizes 16 different disasters that jurisdictions can face. Anybody have a guess as to how many of those disaster types that we might be subject to in San Marino? So there's 16 that the federal government says can happen. There's 10 types of disasters that we would be subject to in San Marino. We can't get a tsunami here. We actually can't get a volcanic eruption. We can't get a blizzard. We can't get a snowstorm. But there are many other disasters that we could be impacted by. And as we've seen recently, some of them we haven't seen in the past. Heat waves that we've seen, wind storms that we've experienced 2 in the last 10 years. The last one came with a significant brush fire. but we are subject to disasters here. As much as you think every day you wake up, it's 72 degrees, it's beautiful, the birds are singing. There may be a day where you actually have to have some things in place so you can survive, and that's really building that resiliency. I like to say, and I'll leave you with a thought before we bring up our first speaker. Um, Once a disaster occurs, the time to prepare is past. That's the one thing we cannot get back is the time to prepare, the time to do things. It's the same for us in the fire service. It's when we put plans in place and we pre-position things and we bring on extra staffing. Once something happens, we don't have the time to go back and correct that. So I'll leave you with that. I did want to introduce our mayor. Unfortunately, we didn't. We should have set aside a parking spot for you. We should have limoed you in. She's a very important person here in the city and big supporter of public safety. So we appreciate that. And with that, I'd like to introduce our featured speaker tonight, Dr. Lucy Jones. Dr. Jones and I worked. Dr. Jones and I worked in the city of Los Angeles for a number of years. Actually, she did most of the heavy lifting because people listened to her. But she's a seismologist with decades of experience studying earthquakes and their impact on communities. She served as a research seismologist for the U.S. Geological Survey for more than 30 years. And I think the most important thing is she dedicated her career to translating complex scientific research into practical guidance for cities and elected officials and others. She's still the person that the USGS reaches out to try to translate what's happened geologically into layman's speak and then actionable items for jurisdiction. She's been a wonderful partner. She's helped shape policies that people said would be impossible to put in place. She took the first step, advocated for them, and years later, many of those are in place. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Lucy Jones.
I'll comment when he said that I did the heavy lifting. I do the talking. He's the one who actually has to do the work. Okay, great. Yeah, I had a wide range of things I could try and cover here today, but I thought I would try to get the ideas about earthquakes that are most important to understand as you're going to look at your risk. Tomorrow, of course, is the Great California Shakeout, which is, I sometimes not sure I want to take credit for this. I did start the first shakeout drill. It was intended as a one-time event to explain what we called the shakeout scenario, a model of what the San Andreas would be. When they first said they wanted to keep on doing it, I was like, over my dead body. I already gave you a year. That's enough, right? But of course, other people have picked it up and it's now an annual event. And last year, 60 million people worldwide participated in shakeout drills. We expect we've already got registration for over 10 million Californians for tomorrow. So at 10:16 a.m. on the 10/16 on the third Thursday, there will be drills conducted in a wide number of locations. The idea being reminding you that the best thing to do is drop cover and hold on. Let me see if I got the right way to advance this. Okay. And I would remind you that drop cover hold on is the right thing to do. I was really, these are actually my grandchildren. And when that earthquake happened in Julia and they were living in Orange County, and the teachers at their preschool got them to drop and cover. They said, drop and cover. And my grandson went, and hold on. So I know that we've gotten through to them and they showed me how they did it. But it really is the safest thing to do. The biggest risk we've got is from flying objects, and being under a table really helps that. And actually, we were just talking about the 1985 Michoacan earthquake, which of course was a very deadly earthquake in Mexico City. And I have pictures from there of complete concrete slab of a big multi-story building. The slab collapsed and it was being held up by school desks. So desks are remarkably sturdy. This is the best thing to do, unless you have to run a long ways to get to somewhere where you can drop cover. Hold on. Right now, sitting here, cover your head. There's nothing to get under, and trying to get back to the tables causes more problems. Biggest source of preventable injury is people trying to run during an earthquake. People go to run outside and they sprain ankles and they break legs. And after the Northridge earthquake, broken legs, sprained ankles, and glass in the feet were the biggest sources of injuries after that earthquake. So we got it work now. Today I want to take us through understanding why we're all at risk, basic of what our earthquakes are and what the situation is here in the San Gabriel Valley, how they cause damage, what's the damage to expect, because most people are terrified of a building collapse, and that's extremely rare. I like to say we overestimate our chance of dying and underestimate our chance of being bankrupted by the earthquakes. So let's look at what it really is at risk, and be better prepared to help San Marino recover, because as you've heard, you better do it beforehand if you want it to work after. So let's start with a very simple thing of what an earthquake is. It's the slip of one block of rock past another that produces shaking as one of its effects. At least if you listen to seismologists, because the movement of the fault is the fundamental event. What you feel is that shaking that's produced by it, and to you, that's the earthquake, right? So we have a source of miscommunication that happens right there. It's a lot like snapping your fingers. When I snap my fingers, I have two surfaces in frictional contact, overcome the friction, move sideways, and release energy in the form of a sound wave that's causing the air to vibrate. Same thing happens with the fault. You move across it and it releases, and it has to have friction holding it together, right? If the fault could open up, there wouldn't be an earthquake because there wouldn't be any friction, right? The picture here is from Kobe, Japan. It moved a distance of about 2 meters, about 6 feet during the earthquake at this location. And every point on the fault gives off energy as this rupture happens through, right? These are just a little GIF of two before and after pictures from the Ridgecrest earthquake. So you can see where the fault has gone through and how things have moved across it. Notice, look in and see what's happening to those roads. All those roads are being offset. Now, this is only a couple of feet of motion. When we have our big San Andreas earthquake, we do expect varying between 10 and 30 feet at different locations down the fault. Now, if you have a freeway crossing the fault and one side is now 30 feet away from the other side, you aren't driving down that freeway. You're not getting gas across that line. They're actually developing ways to keep the electricity going up on those towers. They are actually developing towers that can withstand being moved like that. The other really big point to be noticing is that the bigger the earthquake, the longer the fault. Right? I said we snap like this, but it doesn't happen over the whole fault at once. It starts at an epicenter and rips down the fault. Just like if you were trying to tear a piece of paper. I don't have one here, but you wouldn't pull it all at once. You'd put a tear in at the edge and you'd tear down the fault. That's the lowest energy way of moving. That's what happens here is we have a rupture front that moves up the fault. And the farther it moves, the more energy is released and the bigger the earthquake. So this data is this? Yeah. Here's the magnitude of the earthquake versus the length of the fault in kilometers. So Northridge at 6.7 was actually only 15 kilometers across. It was a relatively short fault for its size. The 1906 earthquake and the 1857 Fort Tejon earthquake on the San Andreas Fault were both close to 400 kilometers long. So what's different about the really big earthquakes is not that you get so much more shaking at one site, but rather that you have so many more sites that are subjected to the shaking. And here's, the USGS has we started doing this like 25, 30 years ago. It was a post-Northridge development, creating these maps to show what the distribution of shaking is. So here we describe the shaking with something called intensity. It runs from 1 to 10. It is not magnitude. Magnitude is one number representing the total energy released in the earthquake. Intensity is how much shaking you get at your site. It was originally a subjective description. It was done by questionnaires. We now do those questionnaires online. It's called Did You Feel It? If you feel an earthquake, Go put in, did you feel it? And you can tell us what you felt. And we actually use it to make more comprehensive maps like this. We can look back 1857. Here's our estimate of what the shaking distribution was. This black line is the fault that produced that earthquake in 1857. And this, the little box here is the fault that produced the Northridge earthquake. And if you compare the two, you would literally have to lay 25 Northridge faults end to end to create the area that produced the 1857 earthquake. So that's right there. That's your really big issue. When those really big earthquake happens and you're having trouble and maybe some of your pipes are gone and you don't have water, well, neither does anybody else. And there's probably somebody else who's in worse shape than you are. So the whole structure we have of mutual aid is going to be really stressed. And we're going to have to be bringing in our mutual aid from a lot farther away. This is a movie that we did as part of that original shakeout scenario to see how all of these pieces come together and create the shaking that we see. Here you're seeing a map where we're starting the earthquake down at the Salton Sea and it's rupturing up this fault. So look at how it moves along. That's that rupture front I was talking about, ripping up the fault. We're 20 seconds into the earthquake. Nothing's happened in Los Angeles yet, okay? And then as the shaking travels out from the fault, it does die off with distance. It can also get trapped in basins. If you have a big bowl of sediment under your area, like the San Gabriel Valley, you can trap the shaking and cause amplification as things bounce around within that. We're seeing it here in the Coachella Valley. And now as we're coming up, so the very first waves have made it over here. This is an overview from downtown Los Angeles looking at, no, this one's Burbank, right. This is looking out at Burbank. Here's Pasadena, Glendale. So San Marino's like sitting right in here. This is the closest one I could find to where we are. Notice that as the shaking came up here and hit in San Bernardino, the waves went out through the San Bernardino Valley and get caught. And all the modeling we did came up with the same thing. So you see how there's all of this extra shaking in here that's not hitting up into the San Fernando Valley nearly as much. And that's a wave guide. So the basins of the San Bernardino Valley and the San Gabriel Valley in our modeling trapped the waves and sent it on. Seismologists love to argue. You will see plenty of papers back and forth about this. We included it in the model because most of the models are coming up with this. And in fact, a really cool study was done comparing the energy produced by the ocean waves in Santa Monica and getting recorded over in San Bernardino. And they actually, whatever's the wave guide, it works in reverse. Seismology tells you that it can go either direction. And we see the same amplification of ocean wave energy being recorded in San Bernardino as this model says San Bernardino is going to send over to us. So when you look at this picture, we have an awful lot of people that are going to be subjected to a very high level of shaking, right? What can we do about it? I like to talk about my resilience equation. When we look at what are we facing, we have a risk that comes from a combination of the hazard that we're exposed to. That's whatever the faults are or the basins, all of the, landslides, volcanoes, whatever the earth is going to do to us. And then we have to think about how many people we expose to that risk. Obviously, different locations get different shaking and different earthquakes, right? Then we have to think about what's the fragility of the buildings that we expose to that. Because you can build buildings to not fall down in an earthquake. We do not choose to. The building code in California is a life safety only code. As long as the building doesn't collapse, that was a success. You chose to build it as so weak that it's a total financial loss. That's your individual financial choice to make. I personally don't quite agree with that because in fact, one building being destroyed is hurting a lot more people than just the owner and the societal impact. But so far, we haven't been willing to move up. Some other countries like Japan and Chile take a higher level, but we haven't so far. And by the way, for those of you who are discussing the 1971 San Fernando earthquake, this is the collapsed hospital that happened in that event. Those all make it worse. We can make it better with a really good response. When your fire department gets out there and stops the fires that got triggered by that event and don't let them grow, you're better off. So a really good response can make a really big difference in what the total impact is. And then I add a fifth one that I call the will to recover. Because one of the things our modeling has shown us is that that the disruption to the business, disruption to the community after the event, those losses can be as great as what's in the event itself. So for 4 different events, 2 earthquakes, a tsunami, and a flooding event, we modeled all the ways we thought there were going to be losses and then how much business disruption would happen. And in every case, the business disruption doubled the losses. So again, this is something we don't think about too much. It's what's going on in Altadena right now. Recovery is a long process with a lot of disruption and a lot of financial losses as those businesses shut down and people don't have jobs. Right? So if we look at this equation, what is it that we can do about it? Well, I remember what I did. Yeah. Let's start by thinking about the hazard. If you want to be able to reduce any of the other losses, you can't change our hazard, but you need to know what it is. So if we look here in Southern California, we're in a really interesting situation. Oh, all the firemen just got up and walked out, so something's going on. Sorry. The San Andreas is not straight. Plate tectonics goes on. The Pacific Ocean is the whole crust underlying the Pacific Ocean is moving towards the northwest compared to North America. But when and the San Andreas Fault in Northern California and down in the Coachella Valley is parallel to that overall motion. But in between, it takes a bend. We have the really inventive name of the Big Bend that we call it. But this big bend means that in between, you're now running into each other. That's why we have the San Gabriel Mountains and the San Bernardino Mountains and over into Santa Barbara. We call it the whole thing the transverse ranges. It's because we've got this bend. It's sort of, imagine if I had 2 plates of glass and I'm pushing them past each other. But now I've put this bend in there and it runs in. What's going to happen? If you force it through, the glass will break up and you'll sweep it around the corner. And essentially all these faults around here are breaking that up and sweeping it around the corner, as well as growing our mountains. And just go look at our mountains. They are some of the steepest mountains in the world. And steep tells you how fast they're moving. They get really tall if they've been moving up for a really long time. But really steep means they're going up faster than erosion can bring them down. And we know what the erosion is, right? We thought we were going to get some debris flows. I guess we did down on the Pasadena Freeway yesterday. But if we come in a little closer, and another way to see this, so these are the faults that happen because of that. These are the way the geologists look at it. You look at maps of faults, they look like lines, and lots of non-geologists will call them fault lines. Faults aren't lines, they're planes. The line that is put on the maps is the intersection of the surface of that fault with the surface of the Earth. This way, we're actually putting where the surfaces are. So the San Andreas is close to vertical, and it looks very narrow. Lots of these other ones dip underneath. So especially here in Pasadena, we have the Sierra Madre Fault that's right at the base of the mountains. Then we have the Raymond Fault that is here, right? It runs through St. Edmunds, I know. It runs through their sanctuary. In between, there's something called, well, above the Sierra Madre, there's the Mount Lukens thrust. As you come down, there's also the Duarte thrust. We have a lot of them as we go through. And then there's the Puente Hills thrust to our south. So if we come in and look in a little more detail, here they're back to lines, but that's just because it's that intersection. So we're here in right here. Sorry, the state map didn't put San Marino on as one of the options as we look at it. So this is the Raymond Fault, the one that's closest to us. There was a magnitude 5 on it in 1988. Notice it's not at the intersection because it dips. It dips down to the north. So this epicenter was actually at Lake and Del Mar. Since it was right by Caltech, we had a bunch of instruments around, so we got really good location on it. We can say it's at Lake and Del Mar, at 17 kilometers below the surface of the Earth. And then the fault goes from there and then comes up and comes out. It's the reason that there's that big scarp. There's the big slope in Huntington Gardens. That's the fault scarp. Historically, lots of things get built on fault scarps because they make for lovely views. You push yourself up and you get to look over it. It also tends to be a source of water. So the original lake of Lacey Park, that's also the Raymond Fault. It used to be a lake, it was called Wilson Lake. And then we came in and we farmed and we drew down the water and it dried out and they filled it in with some more dirt and made Lacey Park out of it. But that's also part of this fault. But notice, you know, this one every couple thousand years, right? And we don't, time from the last earthquake probably doesn't make too much difference. So you have a 1 in 2,000 chance every year of having an earthquake on the Raymond Fault. But if we had one down here on the Puente Hills Thrust, this one is actually, they show here as black lines, or this, I guess this is the one, but it actually is underlaying most of this area. Or this is called the Montebello Fault, or this is the San Jose Fault, and this is the Whittier Fault. You got a lot of choices, right? And we don't know which one is going to happen next. And in many senses, it doesn't matter, right? If you're right on top of the fault, that offsets those things. You know, the fact that we have pipelines crossing the San Andreas, or we have pipelines crossing the Raymond Fault, that's an individual, that does depend on which fault. But what shaking gets to you is, you know, it doesn't really matter where it's coming from once it's gotten into your house and done some damage. All right, so, oh yeah, I did get you one more. I had to get into this really blown up one to get San Marino to show up on the state map. This is a picture of the Raymond Fault. The yellow is something that's called a special study zone. Those of you who live within it is discovered when you try to sell your house. It has to be disclosed. Oh yeah, we're here right now. This is where we are right now. This green is what's called liquefaction susceptibility. These are places that have the type of soils that could liquefy during an earthquake. I don't know how many of you know what liquefaction is. Does this ring a bell to people? So the most distinct example recently was let's see, there we go.
So this is the liquefaction out the back. Dug it out, so you can see across the rose bed, all the sand has just come up out of the ground. And I've got a wheelbarrow full of it at the moment, because it's quite solid. So you'll see this re-liquefy as we go back out to the driveway, particularly as we drive across the cobbles on the driveway.
There it gets going.
Starting to get a bit of liquid back in it now. Yeah. It's shaking now. From liquefies. This is exactly what happens to the city. Buildings on top. First liquid. No one's not moving. Solidifies or stabilizes structurally. So this is why buildings are busy falling over. All this liquefaction happening. From solid to level liquid.
In Christchurch, New Zealand, much of the city was this type of soil. And you shake it and the soil compacts. You know, think of like taking a canister of flour and tapping it on the counter. But because it was saturated, because they had a high water table, there's the water sitting in there. As the soil compresses, the water can't just disappear. And so the pressure in the water goes up because you're compressing all of the sand around it. And you reach a point at which the pressure in the water equals the weight of the sand above it. And that's the definition of quicksand. So you create a temporary quicksand, which will flow around into all sorts of places, and it just bubbled up all over the city. And you saw it, his backyard was just filled with the stuff. And you know, quicksand does a notably bad job of holding up buildings or pipes. And so when this happens, you'll often get broken pipes, you get buildings falling over until the water can stay, until the soil can stabilize, which is a matter of a few minutes. So I'll do this, see if I can do this quickly, just to point out that this is down in El Monte. You do have this patch of it, and this is all available on a state website. If you search for EQ ZAP, Z-A-P-P, you'll find it. And you can come in and get the exact details of it all. But the state's now mapped it all, right? And just to point out, here are the earthquakes of the last 40 years. It's not on the San Andreas. It's not on a lot of our big faults. We don't know what subset is going to happen within our lifetimes. I did want to point out that what we're seeing, though, are aftershock zones. Aftershocks are earthquakes. My least favorite question is that an aftershock or an earthquake? And the answer is yes. Earthquakes are just aftershocks that happen near a bigger one, right? About 5% of the time, the aftershock is bigger than the main shock, and then we change the name and call the first one a foreshock, right? That happened up in Ridgecrest back in 2019. There was a 6.4 and then a 7.1. So this is their aftershock zone. And you can see there's a lot of earthquakes right around it. It's not all right on the fault. This isn't just bad locations. They are spread around some. And so we actually use the word aftershock for anything that's within one fault length of the main shock. By that, I mean, however long the fault was, remember I said it'd be 200 miles for a 7.8, 10 miles for Northridge. It was about 40 miles or so for Ridgecrest, maybe 50. Anything within 50 miles of that 50-mile long fault, we'll call an aftershock. We see it even farther, another couple fault lengths for the first few days. So on the day of the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, there was a magnitude 6 in Imperial Valley and a 5.5 in Santa Monica Bay. Those were triggered almost certainly by the earthquake up in San Francisco. So perhaps, I brought this up because perhaps you heard the news in the last few days about the Cascadia subduction zone being able to trigger earthquakes on the San Andreas. Big study of sediments offshore, they're being able to show some relationship. And I go, well, duh, we told you there were aftershocks, right? If you've had a magnitude 9, where are you going to put the magnitude 8, right? The main fault's already moved and probably doesn't have enough energy left for a big one. And you see the bigger aftershocks in general around the zone. Let's look at one fault length around the Cascadia subduction zone, which is 600 miles long. And it looks like that. We've got Los Angeles within what we call the aftershock zone, within one fault length. So, and back to our emergency professionals here, when you're depending on mutual aid and we think we have the San Andreas earthquake and we're going to have to depend on San Francisco, well, the Hayward Fault is within one fault length of the San Andreas, for the southern San Andreas. So we could be having our aftershock. When we did the shakeout modeling, we did synthetic aftershock sequences, and the first one we ran came up with a 6.5 in Sacramento. And we were sort of like, yeah, get you guys to notice that we've got an issue here. Anyway, so if we go back to this, what can we do about it? Well, the hazard, we can't change that. That's the Earth. We could think about exposure, but it's really too late. We've already built our city on top of the Raymond Fault. So we take that one out. We're left with 3 things that we can do something about. We can look at fragility. What do we, and our response and recovery. And it's really, that's what we do before, during, and after. And I've already talked for longer than I intended. I would point out a couple of the big issues. One is, of course, down buildings. Here's, this is the Northridge Meadows apartment building, right? But for every collapsed building, we have 13 red tags, which means the building is so badly damaged that you can't use it. You're not allowed. It'll probably be torn down. And for every red tag, we have 50, or for every collapse, we also have 50 yellow tags, partial damage that means you can't use it for a while. So we are going to be facing a real loss of buildings, just the ability to live. I will say San Marino's in pretty good shape. Single family homes do really well. We much better than what we do for engineered buildings, because single family homes are a prescriptive building code. We see damage in a previous earthquake, we say don't build it that way. And we've been able to put a lot of homes through a lot of earthquakes. And our prescriptive code is pretty good. On the really big buildings that respond to the really long period motions of really big earthquakes, we have a lot less data. We use engineering, and they are told to basically make the building as weak as possible without falling down, because otherwise you're wasting your client's money. So we're going to see a lot of disruption. And when you think about it, why do we get damage? This is a picture from Turkey from a couple years ago. We all went and said, boy, they must have a lot of corruption, right? Because if it's their corruption, it's not our problem. This is the psychologically safe thing to believe. And if you really look at what's going on, Turkey uses all the same building codes that we do. Their engineers are some of the best in the world. Yes, I think they have corruption. I don't think we're immune from it. As I said, it's believing it's that problem makes you not look at the rest of it. And I want to point out that there's some other things we need to look at. One of them, of course, is older buildings. Again, you seem to have retrofitted just about everything in San Marino. At least your municipal buildings are all very new. I mean, if you look overall in California, we have a significant life safety risk from 4 different types of buildings: unreinforced masonry, soft first story, what's called non-ductile reinforced concrete, and then steel moment frame buildings. You don't have a lot of them here. Downtown Los Angeles has a lot of them. Los Angeles has required mandatory retrofit of URMs that went in 1980, soft first story and non-ductile concrete, which I was working with Mayor when Mario was saying we've been working together. That was what Mayor Garcetti brought in, mandatory retrofit of those buildings. All of the soft first story have been retrofitted in the city of Los Angeles. Pasadena has passed this. I don't think you have a lot of them because these are basically apartment buildings, right? Yeah, okay. Okay. Let me also suggest, did we model the earthquakes correctly, right? I said they use the same building code we do, and they use the same approach to estimating what the ground shaking would be. They really are great engineers. But this is the data from Turkey. The building code said this was the likely maximum shaking, and the blue and red lines are what actually happened. And when you get right on top of the fault, we don't have a lot of data because it's very rare to have an instrument right on top of a big earthquake. This is causing a lot of discussion in the field right now. And then there's the point that our code doesn't actually say don't collapse. It says try not to collapse. And in fact, all right, I guess I took that. It says you need less than a 1% chance of collapsing in 50 years, because they've said the life of most buildings is 50 years, which would surprise the Athenaeum, surprise a lot of buildings at Caltech. Anyway, that's a 10% chance of collapsing in basically your 500-year earthquake, which is basically the San Andreas earthquake we have. And it allows a higher probability of collapse for your once every 2,000-year earthquake, which is what the really strong shaking is going to be here. And we said it's just not worth it to do stronger than that, because people have a belief that it's going to cost a lot more to build a stronger building. Recent estimates, we've been really looking at it, it might add about 1% to the cost of construction to go up to a standard that you can reuse the building. So again, something that might change, but don't believe you got it now. The other thing is fault offsets. I visited this place in New Zealand in 2023. The earthquake was in 2017. Before the earthquake, this was a straight road. The fault moved, that's the fault motion. With a gravel road, you just have to regrade it and put some more gravel down, and you keep on going. We do have the I-15 crossing the San Andreas Fault, and the I-10, and the I-5. Yeah. Not the 101 and not Interstate 8 down through San Diego. That goes below the southern end of the San Andreas. So, and think about the things that would be cut on the fault. We have electric lines, gas lines, water pipes, sewer pipes, and various types of pipelines, like petroleum product pipelines. I will say, Southern California Edison has undertaken a really major program over the last decade to take the information from Shakeout, and they hired the geologist that ran Shakeout, and he's leading a program there to do whatever they can to be more resilient. So they're retrofitting their buildings. They've been designing new ways of doing the towers so that they can have the fault offset and not bring the towers down. The gas company has actually done quite a bit as well. Quite a few of the major faults, and definitely the San Andreas, not all of them, but it's more than just the San Andreas, they've put shutoff valves on either side of the fault. So the gas pipe is going to break, but if you can stop it from spewing out natural gas, you remember the fire fountains from Northridge? Right? That was because the gas just kept on coming out. So they've got procedures for that. The water pipes, well, you're going to be hearing about water for here. It is a challenge because there are so many water companies in California, and there are a few municipal utilities that look at this. But also I would point out, I don't know how much water you get from MWD. Is most of your water imported? Yeah. All sources of imported water have to cross the San Andreas Fault to get to us. And the quickest repair is about 6 months. The longest is going to take 18 months. There was a big analysis trying to figure out where we were with this. So we're going to, even depending on what happens to the water pipes in the ground, you may or may not have access, but the imported water is going to be gone for at least 6 months. And my personal factor, you tend to have sewer lines running next to water pipes, and then they both break. I think that's a picture from the Napa earthquake where people were having to, how are you going to get water? The water pipe was broken, and they went out and picked up water like this. Another tale from Christchurch. I knew somebody there, and he said for 2 months after the earthquake, they had to spend a couple hours every day to go get water for their family. And that was they just had to incorporate standing in line and loading up the water and bringing it back home. And there's a lot of things beyond, you stay if you haven't had a shower in a month. There's a lot of things that you might think you don't want. We have both the fault offset, but also the shaking and liquefaction damaging the pipes. There's a lot of things that can't happen. And a lot of things you need to be able to rebuild, purification system, manpower, they all need internet and transportation to be able to get in and fix things as well. And the long-term consequences are really business disruption and mass evacuation. If you really can't get water back in, people can't live there. You can do it for, they did it in Christchurch for 2 months. It was a pretty miserable way of living. So and when we did the modeling, because our water systems are old, who wants to spend money on a buried pipe? You don't see it, you don't think about it. Somebody asks for extra money for that, and you go, I don't want it. That's not a priority. Right? It's very hard to get repairs on water systems, and they end up doing the most damage. So I think I can't remember now if I had more that I wanted to bring back. Oh, we'll end with this. Interesting thing where we've been able to we've discovered, take earthquakes anywhere in the world, and there's a rate at which they happen that tends to be relatively stable. It's probably driven by plate tectonics. And, but it only will really be stable if you've got the right magnitudes, because little earthquakes are much more common than big ones. So if you get your magnitude wrong, it can look like you've had a rate change when you haven't. We've been able to get our magnitudes really solid back quite far. A lot of work by a lot of scientists. And here's our rate of magnitude 5.5 starting in 1850. And then we stopped. And at the magnitude 6 level, we see the same thing, that about the time of the Landers or Northridge earthquakes, we started having fewer earthquakes. And for all of California, this is all of California, we're missing 20 magnitude 6s up with our previous rate. So it's not like we somehow lost 20 earthquakes. Right? It's 60 missing on the 5.5 level. So we don't know why. And the good news is whatever's causing a slowdown in earthquakes is happening right now. And if you're not having earthquakes, you tend to not have earthquakes. The flip side, though, is the last 30 years is not representative of our long-term risk. So if you think you can take what's happened to you in the last 20 years and go, hey, see, I'm happy, I'm ready, I've handled it, That's not what the real situation is. In California, you got to be planning on more earthquakes than that. And that one, now I can call it an end. Thank you.
Lucy's prepared to take some questions. If folks have questions, let me start with our city club new president. Excuse me.
Thank you, Mario. My question is this. So I see that there is a drop off of earthquakes happening from that linear moment. Is there any connection between the drought that we've been experiencing for the past few years and this line drop off?
It does not be related to anything about water. There's not the drought per se, because like 2015, 2017 were, insanely, 2005 was an insanely wet year, right? However, we have been withdrawing a lot of water. So we are reducing the water pressure by drawing down our water table. We have definitely reduced our risk of liquefaction. And that is one thing that has been debated. The thing is, the real drawdown in water in the water table started way before this. And the earthquakes are happening at depths of about 5 to 10 miles below the surface of the earth. And we're talking about a change in the water table from 10 feet to 50 feet, right? That is a real stress change. And when you increase water pressure, you definitely set off earthquakes. Texas has more earthquakes than California in the last couple of years. That's because they're doing so much pumping of the fracking that they're doing. They've got contaminated water that they dispose of by pumping deep into the earth. So they're increasing the water pressure down where the earthquakes are happening. And they've been having repeated magnitude 5s. We've been joking about it. Maybe they're taking our earthquakes, but that one is very clearly human caused. Our decrease, I think most of us think it's more likely to be something real. We're just not sure what it is. Yeah.
Hi, Dr. Jones, can I ask you a personal question? How do you prepare your house for the earthquake?
The first thing we do, and we've actually moved a few times, whenever we move in, we bring in a foundation specialist. I've used seismic safety up on Lake and asked them to look at our house and see what they could do to make it stronger. Because unless you've built a house, you're living in a house built after 1997, it doesn't have everything that the modern code has. We've actually lived in 4 houses in Southern California. One of them didn't need any work. One of them had our current house required $150 to do a little strengthening around the front door. And we've never spent more than $2,000 on that. Of course, I don't buy a house that's not already bolted to its foundation. I haven't bought the worst ones. So that's step number 1. Step number 2, and perhaps I think the next most important thing is a family communication plan. And then a neighborhood communication plan. Because I sometimes say, forget the kit, go talk to your neighbors. Because, these guys are going to be too busy. And unless you're a really bad emergency, they're not getting to you. And you could be helping your neighbors in a way. And so planning it as a community. And then I will say, I've been actually helping the Episcopal diocese around here, and we're going to be running an earthquake drill tomorrow where we'll be actually communicating between the 15 different parishes around the San Gabriel Valley, practicing how we help each other. This partly came out of what happened with the fires, where 300 people are showing up in a church. They could have, another church could have helped them, but they didn't know. So we're trying to make sure that doesn't happen. So that's step number 2. Then, among other things, storing water. I used to have a swimming pool before we moved to this house, and that was a great backup water supply. And so we keep a certain amount of water, and I will admit we depend a certain amount on the fact that both my husband and I are seismologists, and we can just walk down we're within a mile of our office at Caltech, so I plan to go to work. Um, the other thing is that really breakable, if I don't want to lose it, there's some things that I inherited that maybe if they broke in the earthquake, I'd go, okay. So don't bother too much, but things that I really do want to preserve, I hook it down with museum wax. And I put a liner on all of my kitchen cabinets, that's a friction liner, so that you can pick things up really easily, but they don't slide. And that's it. Oh, and we do bolt our bookshelves, the tall bookshelves get bolted to the wall. So. Whatever you've got, you should get some more. Right. I mean, there's a minimum of a few days. You know, in Christchurch, it was 2 months. You can't store 2 months worth of water. So you've got to, what you need to do is store enough water till we think that FEMA's going to be getting in. FEMA has some amazing plans for how they will be dropping bladders of water into areas like the Arboretum, and then you can go there and get water. Let's hope they're not on government shutdown when this happens. And that they continue to be funded to do this. But there are some pretty impressive plans in place for bringing in water that way, but it's going to take them several days to get that set up. Perfect. Yeah. Yes.
Oil drilling have anything to do, the offshore oil drilling have anything to do with the tremors that we're having?
Not in general, no. I mean, we drill over a lot more than just offshore, right? And offshore just means that it's a little lower and has the waters come on top of it. Actually, my husband did a big study after we're seeing all these extra earthquakes in the Midwest or in the central US, and looked at the rate of earthquakes compared to where all of the oil wells are and what the drilling got the drilling history over the last 80 years. And then the distribution of earthquakes. 17% of Los Angeles County, or the bigger Los Angeles basin, is underlaid by oil fields. 17% of the earthquakes in the area happened within those oil fields, so it seems to be uncorrelated. And changes in drilling patterns did not change the rate. One of the reasons is we have a law in California that after an oil field collapsed in 1945 or 48, the Signal Hill earthquake, magnitude 5.5, and it was basically the collapse of an oil field. And a law was passed after that requiring that whenever something was pumped out of the ground, that fluid had to be replaced. The volume of fluid, they had to have a net zero exchange of fluids. So they had to pump water in after they pumped the oil out. And they discovered that washed the oil field and got them more oil. And they were like, great, right? And we kept on doing it. But so we have never had this big change in pressure because of that law. We always have a net zero going on. So we aren't seeing a correlation. Oh, well, I guess we're doing that. We've got Zoom people listening. If you give it quickly, I can repeat it. How much does climate change affect earthquakes? It doesn't. The good news is earthquakes are 5 to 10 miles below the surface of the earth. And think about it, you go down 10 meters and you're, in a cave, and the surface temperature makes very little difference. So we are not seeing any change in earthquake rates because of climate change, and we wouldn't expect it because we're too far down. That's the good news. However, heat, wildfires, flooding, hurricanes, those all are getting worse.
Yes, could you speak a little more about the bolting the house to the foundation in terms of the risk that you're mitigating and how effective it is?
So bolting your house to the foundation is the single most important thing you can do. What it does is that if you've just got your house resting on your foundation, the earthquake pushes sideways and you get pushed off the foundation. It doesn't kill you, but it destroys the house, and you have to completely rebuild it. And the process of bolting it to its foundation is not all that expensive and keeps it from sliding off that way. I will say, having gone through this with previous houses and we got them checked out, a couple of times they said, well, this was an older house and they now have denser bolts, and we added bolts to what was already there. So it's like houses from the 30s and 40s, you'll often find that they've been bolted, but they no longer consider it an adequate level of bolting, and you'll add bolts. And it's the biggest source. I mean, magnitude fives destroy houses without bolting, and that don't get noticed without it. Actually, the remember Whittier Narrows earthquake in '87? That disruption in Whittier was quite significant, and all those houses are from the 20s. The ones that had been retrofitted were fine, and a lot of the ones that hadn't been weren't. And it was a very unfortunate case study that showed that bolting was extremely valuable. Okay.
Thank you very much, Lucy. That was fascinating. No matter how many times I've heard her speak, I learn fascinating stuff. She really helps us understand the science and then translates it into what we can do about minimizing our risk. Our next speaker comes to us from Cal American. We're fortunate to have with us Brian Barato from Cal Am Water, our local utility partner. Brian plays a key role in ensuring the reliability and safety of our water supply. As Lucy mentioned, we can live without a lot of stuff, but not water. Businesses, public service, and our hydrants depend on the water we get from Cal Am. His work spans infrastructure management, emergency response, and community engagement, helping residents understand how to stay prepared in emergencies. Today, Brian's going to share insights on our local water system, preparedness strategies, and practical steps as a community that we can stay safe and resilient. Please join me in welcoming Cal Am's Brian Barato.
Good evening. Is this working, Jennifer? Perfect. Great. Good evening. Thank you for that introduction. I'm very happy to be here, given that we have the big shakeout tomorrow. And as Dr. Lucy explained, there have been a lot of news stories about preparedness, whether it be fire, whether it be earthquakes, whether it be due to climate change. We've all seen it in the newspapers recently. So what I'm going to do is I have a short presentation that I'd like to take you through. I'm going to share with you a little bit about California American Water so that you have a better understanding about our service system, the customers we serve, and then share with you a little bit about our emergency preparedness plans. I'm happy to report that, we do have extensive emergency plans that are in place that we are required to submit to the state. And we are going through that process right now. I'm also happy to report that next Tuesday, we're doing an emergency tabletop exercise that our staff, that we're doing at our operations center in the city of Rosemead. It's a great opportunity for our senior management, our operations team to get together, to get in the room, and we go through various scenarios of what types of emergencies we potentially could have or we could experience as a water utility. It really allows us to plan, make sure that anything that we may have missed or may not be in the plan needs to be updated. We can update the plan as well that we submit to the state. And then it also allows us to work closely with the police and fire department. If there is an EOC that is implemented or is opened by the state or by the county, we get plugged into that because we are considered first responders as well. So just know that we are preparing, and that exercise will take place next week on our facility with our employees. So just a little history, just a little bit of facts about California American Water. As you can see, we have water systems as far north as Sacramento and as far south as San Diego. We provide water to a little more than about 700,000 customers in the state. Statewide, we have about 318 employees. And we have water storage facilities below ground or above ground reservoirs throughout the state, and a little more than about 170 of them. Our distribution storage capacity is 118 million gallons. And then our fire hydrants, we have a little more than 15,000 fire hydrants in the state. And then for water quality, which is really important, I know a lot of you have questions about the testing that we do, about the new testing guidelines that have been handed down from the federal government and also from the state. We conduct about 650 tests on more than 225,000 water samples in a year. So I'm happy to say that we meet and exceed all federal and state water standards. On a more micro level, which I think is probably more important for us in this conversation here, we have 3 water systems in our Los Angeles district. The San Marino water system is one of the 3 in our system here in Los Angeles. As you can see, we've been providing water to the city of San Marino, portions of Rosemead, San Gabriel, Temple City, and Los Angeles County for more than 55 years. The source of water, I know Dr. Lucy talked about this, where do we get our water? You guys are curious about our water. 90% of our water that we provide to the entire system of the San Marino water system is groundwater. We pump it from the basin, 2 basins, the San Gabriel Basin and the Raymond Basin. And then we get 10% of our water is purchased from the Metropolitan Water District. I can tell you that 10% stays in San Marino. We do not move that anywhere else throughout the other cities. That water comes directly to you as our customers in the city of San Marino. I like to say we have a very lean operation. We have 43 men and women that spin the wheels, pull the levers, that do the maintenance of our system, of our 3 systems in our Los Angeles district. And then our operations center, I don't know if you guys have ever been to it, but we're located in the city of Rosemead, right over by Rosemead High School. Specifically on the right-hand side, these numbers specifically represent our facilities in the city of San Marino and the upper and lower systems. Our 2 systems, which I'll show you on the next couple of slides, the San Marino water system is divided between an upper system and a lower system. So we have 6 water storage facilities above ground and below ground where we store water. We have 16 wells where we pump water out of the basins, as I had mentioned. Have a little more than 1,000 fire hydrants, 179 miles of pipe, and completed infrastructure projects. We completed about $2 million worth of investments back into the system, which is directly a benefit to you as our customers. And so what does that mean? We're either rehabbing wells, we're rehabbing booster pump stations, we're putting in new pipeline, we're rehabbing large reservoirs, taking a reservoir that may not meet the seismic standards, the new guidelines that are out, and so we'll demolish that and we'll build a new one that will meet current standards. This is for 24, but we also have numbers for 22 and 23. Those numbers were about another $6 million as well. And the investments that we put back into the system allows us to continue to provide safe and reliable water to our systems. One of the things that our operations and engineering team spends a lot of time on is they do an assessment of our system, and they look at where we potentially would have high challenges, where we have a broken valve or where we have a leaky main. And we take that opportunity to do 2 things. One is where we have those challenges, we move those up on the list. But more importantly, if we have a 2-inch main or a 4-inch main, we need to go in and upgrade it, what we do is we take it from a 2-inch main and maybe upsize it to a 4-inch main, or we take it from a 6-inch main and upsize it to an 8-inch main. And what that does is it adds capacity and adds reliability and adds resiliency to your water system. So the more water that there's in the pipe, that means there's more flow, and there's more water coming into the system for us to be able to handle any sort of emergency that may come our way. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, our San Marino water system is divided up into two sections. It's the upper system and the lower system. As you can see, this is a picture. We're going to start in the lower area. This is We provide water to portions of Rosemead, as I had mentioned, Temple City, and a little bit of El Monte. And then the next slide here, you can see this is the upper system. This is exactly where we are at. We serve the entire city of San Marino, and we serve a small portion of San Gabriel, and we serve a small portion of unincorporated Los Angeles County. The bigger part of the map is the majority of, is all of San Marino is where we serve. The one thing that I did want to point out is, I don't know if you can see it here on the right-hand side. This is a little bit small, I apologize. But we do have an interconnect between our lower system and our upper system. And so what does that mean? We can move water, and we currently move water from the lower system up into the upper system. And the reason we do that is because of demand. And so to help meet demand in the upper system, we are able to move water from the south part to the northern part. And in an emergency, should there be some sort of disruption in the southern in the lower system, we're also able to move water from north to south as well. But currently, on a normal day-to-day basis, the water moves from south to north. So what is our emergency preparedness process? So we look at water systems, at least at California American Water, we look at it, and an emergency is an emergency, whether it be fire, whether it be an earthquake, whether it be a water main break. Our emergency preparedness plans prepare for all three. And our processes are pretty much similar for any emergency that comes our way. We're committed in our efforts to enhancing fire preparedness and helping and emergencies, earthquakes, and water mains to ensure the resiliency of water service before, during, and after emergencies. One of the things that we do is when we get made aware of, for example, a wildfire or a fire or some sort of emergency, our operations team will go out and they will raise the tank levels, the level of water in our tanks up to the maximum capacity so that we can have a longer supply of water to help us manage any sort of emergency that we have. The other thing that we do is, as I mentioned, is we prioritize our system maintenance, including fire hydrant inspections when fire risk is low. And that, you know, sometimes if there's an earthquake, as we've seen previously, there are fires because the gas lines break or because of something else that's caused the fire, electrical lines in a community. And our public service, our firemen and women need to be able to have water, right? So what we do is we're required by the state to test our fire hydrants. We do about 20% of our fire hydrants every year. And then in 2027, the state has mandated that we are, all water utilities, in particular California American Water, we're going to need to test our fire hydrants every year, 100% of them going forward, which we think is a great opportunity for us. And it just adds to the safety, the resiliency, and knowing that should there be an emergency, we're able to get water to our public service, our firemen and women in the police department as well. The other thing that I've talked about a little bit is fire. You know, when there are fires, particularly in the Eaton, we remember the Eaton fire and the Palisades fire very recently. You know, we heard a lot about, oh, you're in a high fire zone, or that community lived in a high fire zone. Well, I believe maybe you all have seen or read the news in the LA Times recently that CAL FIRE recently updated all of their maps. And there were a number of communities that were not identified as high fire, and now and they are now considered a high fire zone. And because of that, what we're doing is we're going strategically through all of our systems in the state of California, and we're removing any brush or anything, any sort of potential fire hazard on our easements and also around our facilities. What we're doing is we're hardening those facilities to make sure that there isn't any challenges or anything could happen to our facilities in a fire. The other thing I really wanted to point out, and Chief Areta and I talked about this, I think you may all know, or I hope you do, we are a subsidiary of American Water. American Water is the largest investor-owned water utility in the United States. Here in California, we're pretty small, a little more than 700,000 customers between Sacramento and San Diego. The further you go east, for example, When you get to Pennsylvania American Water, or you get to New Jersey American Water, we serve 100% of the state. There is not any other water utility in those states. And so the reason I bring this up is because we heard people talk about mutual aid. We heard people talk about, well, can we bring water? Can we get supplies from Sacramento or San Francisco down to Los Angeles or into San Marino? I'm happy to say that because we're such a large company under American Water, we have national contracts where we can bring supplies in, we can bring hydrants in, we can bring booster stations in, we can bring pipe in from across the country. It's not necessarily going to come from California because of the national contracts that we have. We recently had, and I'll mention it, the mountain fire, which was in Ventura very recently. We had some challenges up there. Our system wasn't impacted by that fire, but because of the national contracts that we had and what was going on in Ventura County, backup generators were very, very challenging to get, and so was bottled water. And so because of that, we were able to get our national contract in place, which was already in place, contact our parent company, American Water, and they moved generators from various states, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, into the Ventura district, just specifically for California American Water. The other piece is we shipped in 4 truckloads of pallets of water that we were able to provide to our customers and our residents because there was a do not drink order as the fire was going on because they needed to make sure that there was no contamination of the water. And so I share that with you because we think this is one of the great assets that we have as California American Water, and one of the things that I think that you should take away as being very comfortable knowing that, you know, as Dr. Lucy Jones mentioned, there were a lot of other smaller water utilities, mutuals. There were small cities that don't have access to this source of supply or to the funding that we have, being a subsidiary of American Water. So this slide really outlines a little bit more about what we do. And one of the things I'm proud to say is that our operations team, while we are nimble and while we are not very large in capacity, I will tell you that they are very, very resourceful. They stand ready to go out and assess any emergency that we may have. They very, very quickly get on the ground. They determine what sort of next actions we need to do, and also figure out what is the quickest course of action to continue to provide safe and reliable water to our customers. One of the great benefits that we have, I serve on the communications external affairs side as the chief mentioned. We have this brand new system called Alerts OneView. How many of you are familiar with Alerts OneView? None of you? Robert, my colleague in the back. Here's what I would say. Alerts OneView is an app that we use, that water utilities use. It is a way for us to get in contact with our customers during an emergency. The great thing about it is we can either text you, we can email you, we can call you directly. And if you are not familiar with it, and if you have not signed up to receive emergency communications from California American Water, I would encourage you to, because it is the best way for us to get hold of you should there be any sort of emergency, and should we need to get in contact with you, and if you had any questions about what's going on in the water system with your water, should there be a major emergency, and even on just a sort of a regular water main break. If we have just a regular water main break, not a regular water main break, but if we have a water main break, which sometimes happens in our systems, we have a way to share, hey, there's a water main break on Huntington Drive. Our crews are out there, they're making repairs, you know, please be cautious. We should be done in 4 to 5 hours. And we think it's a great opportunity for us to communicate with you, our customers. So it's really easy for you to sign up to it. You can if you pay your water bill online using My Water, which is our online portal. I would encourage you to log in there, or the next time you pay your water bill, go in there. There's a tab. You can click on it. It's contact information. Just put in your phone number. Do you want us and your email, and then you get to choose. Do you want us to text you? Do you want us to call you? Or do you want us to email you? Doesn't cost you anything, and it's no harm. And we won't sell your information, and we will only use it in an emergency situation. The other thing I would love to point out is, as I mentioned earlier, during emergency events, we have a very strong habit of going out and raising the tank levels. And that's really, really important because, you know, throughout the day, there's a drawdown on our tanks because of demand. People are at home at night. There's another drawdown as well. But when we get word that there is an emergency that's happening, when there is a water main break, or we've all heard about these public power shutoffs that are happening throughout the state. We haven't had any here in San Marino. In our Ventura district, we have had a number of them because our Ventura district is in the hills. Our team gets in the habit of just raising the levels of the tanks so that there is a constant set of constant water and supply for our customers. The other thing that we do, I mentioned the generators, the backup power. We do ready those and have those on standby at all times. We do not have any generators, permanent generators here in the city of San Marino, in the city of San Marino or in our San Marino water system. Our system doesn't need it, but we do have a supply of portable generators that we can move into place very, very quickly and move into place at a moment's notice, depending on where that emergency is and what part of the system needs some assistance. So this is a slide that I wanted to share with you. I think this is really a good example of California American Water's emergency response plan. I know this is, I mentioned the mountain fire, but a lot of the things that are in here relate to earthquakes, relate to water main breaks, relate to fires. And this is the steps and some of the key pieces that our Ventura District operations team did to allow our customers to continue to have safe and reliable water. As I mentioned, once we got word of the red flag warning, our operations team went right into quick action. They topped off all of our generators. They topped off all of our workforce vehicles, and any sort of power machine or anything that used gas. We topped all of those off. In addition to that, we put I think it was a 25-gallon diesel can on each of our utility trucks as spare. And the reason we did that is because our backup generators run on diesel. And so we have to monitor those and refill those. So we took some proactive actions there. The other piece I mentioned is optimizing the storage system, raising the level of tanks. And then more importantly, as you know, we have ongoing maintenance throughout our systems. And you've probably seen our utility workers out there twisting the valves, doing maintenance on the fire hydrants, putting new mains in your streets. During this time, we stopped all maintenance in our system that was non-critical. We felt that it was more important not to put any more stress on the system and make sure that we could continue to provide safe and reliable water to our customers. Water production, I'm happy to report that during this mountain fire, we were able to meet all demand for fire suppression, fire safety, and we didn't experience any of the other challenges that some of the surrounding water utilities experienced up in Ventura County. And one of the things that's really, really hard to, and it took me a long time, I've been with the company for 15 years, and it was really hard for me to understand this, that, well, wait, you turn on a fire hydrant, you should have unlimited amounts of water, right? Well, in a big fire, you have multiple fire hydrants that are open. You may have one down there, you have maybe one in the back of the room, you may have one on the other side. And the more that you're drawing water out of your system, it stresses your system. And when you have less water coming back into your system and more water coming out of your system, then you run into some pressure issues. Then you potentially run into supply issues as well. So I'm happy to report that we did not have that issue here, and that is just a testament to our operations team in Ventura, but that's also a testament to our Los Angeles team because they will also follow very similar practices and protocols for California American Water. You see down on the bottom, you're like, oh, what is a water alert? Unsafe water alert. Ooh, the terrible term, right? So we issued a precautionary notice in consultation with the State Water Resource Control Board. They're the health department that oversees water utilities. And the reason we decided jointly with them to issue this for our customers in Ventura County was because of the runoff that was happening from the mountain fire. You know, houses were being burnt down, businesses were being burnt down, and there's a lot of runoff with chemicals in it. And so just for precaution, what we did is we issued the water alert. We urged our customers to not consume the tap water for a short period of time. As we were flushing the system, our utility workers were out inspecting the system to make sure that there was no damage to the system. We didn't lose any pressure. And then also, we were waiting to get back sample results from the testing that we had tested on the water. I'm happy to report back that we didn't have any challenges, but as a precaution, we did that. But at the same time, as I mentioned earlier, we were able to bring in pallets of water to our customers. And we had multiple stations where customers could drive up, they'd meet our utility workers. There were just pallets of water. I think, you know, probably half of this room would be filled with pallets of water. And we were giving customers cases of water to take back to their home for a short period of time so that they could continue to live their lives, because we didn't want them to not be without water, right? And so the other great thing is there were a couple of small water utilities, mutuals, and small cities out in the Ventura County that don't have access to the resources that we have. And we talked about, it was mentioned earlier, mutual aid. And so we provided a truckload of water to a couple of those water utilities to assist them because they needed help. And we felt that that was just the right thing to do. So I share this with you because I think it's important for you to understand a real live emergency that we've gone through recently that maybe help settle some of a lot of the questions you may have or the uneasiness that you may have. So with that, I will turn it over to you and take any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Brian. That was very informative. We really appreciate you coming. Is there any questions? Yes, sir.
I noticed on your first page, the 90% of your water from the ground.
Yes.
How do you avoid the groundwater from the industrial region?
How do we, your question is, how do we prevent contamination into the groundwater? Is that what you're saying?
From the industrial region.
Yeah. So there are extensive tests that water utilities are required to do that ensure that we meet or exceed all state or federal standards. The other thing is where there is needed, we do some treatment at some of our wellheads and some of our facilities where we find that there is some emerging contaminants, and we're monitoring those on a daily basis. Daily, yes.
Years ago, contaminated with polychlorinated bisphenol. You're probably aware of that.
I've read about it. I wasn't with the company 20 years ago. But yeah, I can say again, sir, that we are testing every day. We do hundreds of tests. Our water quality team is second to none. And we have a very, very good relationship with the State Water Resource Control Board. We have a great relationship with EPA. And if there is anything that we see that is alarming, and we have minimum thresholds that we need to treat our water down to make sure that we continue to provide you with safe and reliable water. Yes, sir.
Yes. Do you charge the same rate for all customers? And second question is, why is my water bill keep going up?
Those two are great questions. So we have, California American Water has what's called tiered rates, which are considered conservation rates, right? So the less water you use, the less you pay. We here in the San Marino district, you are one of our largest water users in the Southern District, in Los Angeles and in Southern California, between our Ventura system, our LA systems, and our San Diego system. And it just has to do with the size of your properties. We have large properties here, we have large homes here, we have large families here, right? So our average customer here is very different than our average customer in Ventura and our average customer in San Diego. The other thing is the water that you receive here in the city of San Marino is expensive. Because the water we get from MWD is a little more expensive than we get when you pump water out of the ground. So there's that piece as well. But as we all know, everything is going up. Water is very expensive to move from point A to point B. It's very, very heavy. Electricity is going up. The gas that we use to run our generators and to use the electricity used to run our booster stations and to run our wells is going up. So I would love to get your name and number. And if you're having a challenge with your water bill, I can put you in contact with somebody that will be able to help you.
Does CalAm have any plans to transfer to reclaimed wastewater?
We do not at this time. No, it would be, we're always looking at it. The great thing is it's water utilities always look for diversity, an additional source of supply, et cetera. But that would mean that there would need to be a whole second system put in place, which is very, very expensive. And then there would need to be a big treatment facility, and where do you put that treatment facility, and then getting the approvals for it. There are some plans to do, I believe LA County is looking at doing one, and there's another program called the GRIP program, which is potentially taking water that goes down the San Gabriel River and pumping it all the way back up into the spreading basins. I know there's still discussions on those as well. I believe so, yes. Yes, right up here. Oh, wait. Oh, okay, we'll take in the back and then we'll come up here. Does that work? Great, yes.
Yes, I save a barrel of water for 5 years. What do you suggest it if I want to, in case emergency, is that safe to use?
You have a
barrel.
you have a barrel of water
Of
in
water,
on the side
yes.
of your house or in your
Inside my
backyard?
house, yeah, it's to save the water, right? I have a barrel of it.
As long as it's not being exposed to the elements, heat, or if it's in the house or in your garage, that's okay. If it's on the outside,
Under the sun,
if it's outside of your house,
under the sun,
under the what?
the sun, there's no cover on the top, just
Oh,
that's the barrel.
oh, it's
and
an
the
open
cover.
barrel of water.
Oh, no, not open barrel, it's closed, but I don't have place to put that in the garage or whatever, I put in yard.
Yeah, I would say that every once in a while you should probably drain that out.
Okay.
And then clean it out and then refresh the water. And what I would encourage you to do is if you have planter boxes or you have trees or you have, use it on your property, please do not put it on hard surfaces.
Okay, all right, thanks.
And there's a question up here. Thank you for your patience.
Dr. Jones mentioned that all of the imported water to Southern California has to cross the San Andreas Fault. And looking at your slides, it looked like 90% of the water that you provide is sourced locally through groundwater. Can you help me understand what does that mean for folks in the event of a major quake? Does that potentially translate to lower risk of water disruption? because it's locally sourced and doesn't have to cross a boundary like that?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
It
That's what
does.
I
Yeah.
was, I didn't want to assume,
No,
so
that's a
thank you.
great question. And as I mentioned, water utilities are always looking for additional sources. So the more sources that we can have, whether it be groundwater, whether it can be reclaimed water, whether it can be water coming from the Colorado River or coming from the Delta, as we get from MWD for the purchased water that stays here in San Marino, that gives us more resiliency. So that allows us to be able to provide water to you, hopefully and potentially during an emergency crisis, should go down or should two of them go down? It's a great question.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest earthquake will take out all of the foreign sources,
Oh,
right,
yeah.
all at once. And I think 90% is the highest number I've ever seen. I know Pasadena's 50%, and I believe the city of Los Angeles is like 10 to 15% local and 85% imported. So this is a great source of resiliency, and you just be told, don't water your lawn, and you'll have plenty of water left for the rest of your needs.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian.
Thank you.
Very informative and educational presentation. I know CalAm, maybe you might not know it, but actually their response is very robust. We call them in the middle of the night, and I know Brian gets tired of hearing from me, so he's got a number of folks that pick up the phone before I ever get there. I know one of the things that occurred after the January 7th is disaster up in Altadena, and we dodged a bullet here. I felt we had problems here locally, but nothing compared to what other jurisdictions experienced. We did have our EOC open for 2 days. We declared a local emergency. Our folks, fire and police, were here for a couple days, just making sure residents were safe. We actually had a number of small fires in town. I think the police officers put out as many fires as we do. We went through the entire city cache of fire extinguishers because of the embers from wires down, from a couple of house fires that occurred locally. And then we were dealing with lots of falling wires and the downed trees. I mean, significantly sized trees. Fortunately, the quick action by city manager, getting Athens on contract and then getting Mariposa on contract to clear our roads was really great foresight and put us in a great position here. But we always ask, and we went to school on the disaster, what can we do better for you? We did a series of after actions. One of the things we did address is communications. And you'll be seeing a series of articles in the Tribune and other materials coming out on some of those enhancements to residents that you may see in the event of a disaster or just local information. We have had the capability of putting out wireless emergency alerts, many of that you've heard about in the news of other jurisdictions, the difficulties they've experienced, but so far we've used ours once, and it went out and actually performed like a gem. So I knock on wood. I hope I don't have to use it, but our system is working quite well, and you'll be hearing more about some of the enhancements we've made. I did want to bring up our mayor, Gretchen Shepherd-Romy. She's now our mayor and a great supporter of public safety. And just to close this event out, again, to thank our speakers. You guys were wonderful, fascinating, and they were exactly on point, covering the questions that I hear every day from our residents. So thank you both. I do have a gift coming for them, but we didn't get the embroidery done yet, so you'll be getting it.
Okay.
Mayor?
I just wanted to thank everybody for coming out, thank our distinguished speakers. Dr. Jones, incredible. I think that was fascinating for everybody. Also, I was thinking of how the Metropolitan Water District, we have the presence of John Morris is here. Many of you know him. He was a district, a board of directors member for over 3 decades, 35 years. So a lot of the plans and protections that are in place for our water system are thanks to him and his colleagues. And I think we are in good hands with Cal-Am. But we missed one of the most important parts for all of us individually was to hear from our own public service officers, our police and fire, who were prepared. But I know this has gone long tonight in absolutely the best way. We've heard from experts in the fields that know those industries and how it's going to affect us if something catastrophic happens. So what I think we're going to try to do is push out information to you through various sources, our fire department and police department, as well as in the back. Please stop by those tables. We have police and fire back there. They have handouts on how to be individually prepared, like what you need in your house, that type of thing. So please pick those up for your neighbors perhaps or yourselves. And then we'll be planning another meeting like off with our fire and police personnel, and they will walk through some of those things that we can have in place here already in San Marino, anticipation of an emergency, as well as what you could do to prepare you and your family. You know, a little bit more of a residential individual type of discussion. And so thank you for coming tonight, and we look forward to having you back in a couple months, and we will talk about it in a very personal way. And if you're interested, please share with your neighbors and get them to come out and hear some of this important information, because we're going to depend on each other one way or the other, just like we do now, but it'll be much more important. Thank you. Thank you.